All right. So we start with the Itipiso as before. Itipiso bhagava araham samma sambuddho vichacharana sampano sugato lokavidru anuttaro Viradhammo sarati satta deva manusana puttro bhagavati savakato bhagavata Dhammo santitiko akaliko vehipasiko opanayiko pachatang Viradhammo vinyuhiti supatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho ujupatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho nyaya patipanno bhagavato savaka sangho samichi patipanno bhagavato savaka sangho yaridam chatari purisa yukani yata purisa buddhala esa bhagavato savaka sangho ahuneyo pahuneyo dakineyo anjali karaniyo anuttaram punyaketang lokasati Itipiso bhagava araham samma sambuddho vichacharana sampano sugato lokavidru anuttaro Viradhammo sarati satta deva manusanam buddho bhagavati savakato bhagavata Dhammo santitiko akaliko ehipasiko opanayiko pachatang Viradhammo vinyuhiti supatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho ujupatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho nyaya patipanno bhagavato savaka sangho samichi patipanno bhagavato savaka sangho yadidam chatari purisa yukani yata purisa buddhala esa bhagavato savaka sangho ahuneyo pahuneyo dakineyo anjali karaniyo anuttaram punyaketang lokasati Itipiso bhagava araham samma sambuddho vichacharana sampano sugato lokavidru anuttaro Viradhammo sarati satta deva manusanam buddho bhagavati savakato bhagavata Dhammo santitiko akaliko ehipasiko opanayiko Chatam Vedita Govinyo Iti Subhati Panno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Ujjupati Panno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Nyayapati Panno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sami Chipati Panno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Yadidam Chatari Purisa Yugani Atta Purisa Purgala Esa Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Ahuneyo Ahuneyo Adakineyo Anjali Karaniyo Anuttaram Punya Ketang Lokasati. So before we do the meditation, just a few words, just to prime the pump. Some of the language I use in the practices of awareness are non-becoming and non-resistance. So you maybe heard me use that language. And that's very much around the descriptions of tanha or craving that we have in Buddhism. So Bhava Tanha is becoming, and then Vibhava Tanha is resisting. So in meditation, we're not trying to become anything. What we're doing is we're collecting our attention around some neutral object, say like bodily sensation in this case, and then learning how to create the causes for peace, the causes for composure, and just trusting that the process will work, as opposed to trying to become peaceful. Because if you try to become peaceful, you then tend to try to get rid of that which is not peaceful, thought or restlessness, and that won't work because it's not really a peaceful attitude. It's an attitude based on becoming and getting rid of, and it has inbuilt in attention, and it's inherently not peaceful, right? So the causes have to be in line with peace. So first and foremost, we basically try to awaken and accept what we're feeling, whether it's peaceful or not. That's not the point. The point is the acceptance and the quality of attention. So if the quality of attention is based on acceptance and knowing how things are, then we can direct that attention to something like a bodily feeling with acceptance, whatever you're feeling, and then learn to collect and compose our attention on that bodily feeling. So then what's happening in stream of consciousness, even though there are the restlessness or planning or daydreaming, you keep bringing back, you keep creating the causes for composure. It's very simple cause and effect. So please do look in your practice. Is there an underlying agenda of trying to get something? And is there an underlying then rejection of what is? And that sometimes is, perhaps as the person's question this morning, subconscious, and you're not quite aware of it. So what you're trying to make conscious is the whole nature of your efforts. So to understand right effort, you have to awaken to how you do make effort. And if the effort is based on becoming or get rid of, that will be a part of suffering. But if it's an awakened awareness and the effort to compose or collect the mind, not with desire, but just with it's kind of like craft, say. If you want to weave a rug, say, I'm sure you're all weaving rugs right now. I was just looking at a book on Navajo weaving, so that's where I'm at. I'm always playing around with stuff. But anyway, if you want to weave a rug, you have a goal. You kind of know the piece you're trying to make. But you know, to do it, you have to do it. You just make the causes for a good warp and a good weft, and you pack it down, and you get the colors right. And in the end, hopefully, you have a nice product. So certainly, we have a goal. We have a goal of being peaceful and having a sense of insight into the way things are. And one of the problems we often face in old-time meditators is that we've had experiences which are profound. We've had experiences which are really extraordinary, both in terms of insight and calm. And then it's very hard not to try to get them back with memories. So you got to remember there was that experience in some retreat you had, and then we keep trying to get that experience. And that's Bhava Tanha. Having said that, there's also confidence and skill in the craft. So it doesn't mean that you can't return to a place of calm, but you're not doing that with desire. You're doing that with intelligence, with the skill that you've learned, with the craft that you've learned. And all those are what we call the paramis: patience, application of mind, wisdom, all manner of wholesome qualities. And those wholesome qualities then are the foundation for the mind becoming more and more, you becoming more and more competent in calming the mind in meditation. And that's not based on becoming. That's based on understanding what works, applying that kind of effort, sustaining that kind of effort, and then letting the result be what the result is. The result will take care of itself. So it's not oriented to the future. It's not like I'm practicing now so that in half an hour I will be peaceful. I'm practicing now to be here now. To be here now in a more and more profound way. To be present in a more and more profound way, in a more insightful way. And then the future takes care of itself. And you do notice that, of course, the future is always a concept. And the only thing you really can know is the present moment. You can remember past, you can think of the future, but you don't really have the present moment. So the isn't a skill that even if you're floundering, that's fine. Okay, I'm floundering. What if I try this? What if I apply my mind this way? How might that work? So like I've done a bit of weaving. I've woven a few rugs, and say when I first tried to weave a fairly large, it was 6 foot by 4 foot rug, putting out the warp strings was just horrifying. There were so many bits of string that my first one I threw in the garbage. It's just all knotted up. But then I persisted and I kept trying, and then eventually I sort of figured it out. It wasn't great, but I figured it out. So you just keep applying your attention in that way of learning. And if you like learning, I like learning. I don't know about you, I really like learning stuff. And you apply that learner's attitude to the meditation, then you say, okay, that was difficult. What can I learn from that? Or my mind's really confused by something. Okay, how can I learn from that? As opposed to, oh God, if my mind wasn't confused, then I could meditate. Yeah. Or if I wasn't restless, then I could meditate. Or, if I wasn't 75 years old, I'd be 35 years old, but I'm not, I'm 75. It's just that kind of practical, pragmatic approach. Well, this is how it is. This is how I feel. What if I try this? What if I try that? What will be the result? And then if you have the learner's mind, then you'll start to remember, yeah, that pathway gives a good result. And I can re-travel that pathway. Or this pathway, that didn't work. I tried too hard. There was too much effort. I got tense. I'm not going to travel that pathway. And that's a confidence in a path of travel rather than a desire to recreate some experience I had. That's different. So there is confidence. There is the possibility of a kind of evolving of skill. But it comes always just present moment awareness, present moment awareness, present moment awareness. So let's do that same technique. I hope it's not too boring, but sometimes just something simple, repeated again and again and again and again can be helpful. I will try it again. So settle into your posture. See if you can get comfortable enough where you don't have to fidget. Certainly we will all, it's fine to move on pain mindfully, but it's just that fidgetiness of scratching and itching and readjusting. Try not to go there. So adjust your posture, a little more comfortable, feel the posture, and then see if stillness might be helpful. Just the still body, still mind. So just saying stillness to your body, what does that feel like? Do you get tense? Or do you just allow the body to be still and then just let it settle into the posture? And you feel the arms settling into your thighs, say. The feet settling into the ground. The shoulders settling into the torso. And so on. Make sure that your chin is slightly lower than your forehead and that your knees are lower than your hips. These are helpful posture suggestions. So we'll go through that same pattern. So remember, we're becoming conscious of sensations in the body, and we're not visualizing them as visual objects. We're not creating images. And we're also not conceptualizing. So the feeling in a hand is different than the thought of hand. The thought of hand is abstract. The actual experience of hand is vibratory sensation energy. So bring your attention to your mouth, inside the mouth, the floor of the mouth. Feel the sensations in the floor of the mouth. Let them become conscious. Notice how it's just waiting, and then you start to know that area. And what we're doing, it's not a kind of hard concentration. It's just a composure. You're collecting, settling, composing the mind around that physical area. So it's not like you're really focusing and trying to see it very, very hard. And that would create probably a lot of tension in your eyes and in your forehead. So it's kind of, the posture is very open, relaxed. And then the attention groups itself around that body part. And then you just wait. And so it settles the mind. Again, inside the mouth, inside the left cheek, the left wall of the mouth, the right cheek, the right wall, the upper palate, the roof of the mouth, sensations. Feel the lower jaw, the lower lip, lower teeth, and lower gums. Let them become conscious as sensation. Feel the upper jaw, the upper lip, teeth, gums. Feel the tongue as sensation. Now feel the whole mouth, the whole area as sensations. Radiating, vibrating. So the whole mouth is one unit, as one ball of energy, ball of sensation. So get a sense of this being composed on that Go inside the mouth, draw a line up to your ear canals. Feel the ear canals inside the ears. And as the question yesterday, if you don't feel anything, fine. Then that is the feeling of nothing. So we're not looking for any experience or changing any experience. We're just allowing the experience that there is to become conscious. So this composes the mind. If you're looking for something, then you won't really calm the mind, because there'll be a sense of looking for something rather than looking at what is, or feeling better, feeling what is. The ear canals outwards to the outer ear, tip of the ear, the folds of the ear. Feel both ears as sensation. No thought, no need to think about this. Feel the sensations that are the nose, bridge of the nose, the nostrils. Sensations, vibrations. The eyes, feel the hollows of the eyes. Let them become conscious as sensation. And the eyeballs themselves, cradled in the sockets of the eyes. Feel both eyes as a ball of sensations in awareness, in consciousness. Forehead, go inside the skull, feel the forehead, or whatever you feel there in that area. Draw a line to the center of the head, inside the head. Feel any sensations there. Attention at the top of the head, the scalp inside. And draw a line to the center of the brain, inside the head. Feel the back of the head. Feel the sensations and draw a line into the center of the head. Now gather all that together as one ball or one mass of sensations. Mouth, ears, nose, eyes, forehead, top of head, and back of head, and middle of head. Feel all that as one group, one ball of sensations. Let it become conscious. And notice the mind just starts to feel composed with the body, with bodily sensations. No need to think, non-becoming, non-resistance, just this way. Draw a line down to the neck. Feel the neck. Feel the sensations in the neck, back of the neck, sides of the neck, and the throat. Feel the neck as sensation. Feel the neck, back of the head, top of the head, forehead, eyes, nose, ears, mouth, tongue, that whole area as a mass of sensations. Bring attention to the left side of your neck where the neck connects to the shoulder. Feel the left shoulder. Allow the feeling, the sensations there to become conscious. No thinking. Feel the left upper arm. Feel the left wrist. Sensations in the left wrist. Left forearm. Oh, I should have said elbow. So left elbow, left forearm, left wrist, back of left hand. Left thumb, index finger, middle finger, ring finger, and small finger. Feel the palm of the left hand. Feel the whole left hand, very sensitive. Lots of sensations radiating in space. And then the left wrist, forearm, left elbow, left shoulder, left upper arm. Feel that whole unit. Bring it all together into one mass of sensations. Let that be conscious in awareness in space. And feel the right shoulder with the neck, shoulder come together. The right upper arm, sensations there. The right elbow. The right forearm. The right wrist. Back of the right hand. Thumb, index finger, middle finger, ring finger, small finger, palm of the right hand. Feel the whole right hand as a mass of sensations in awareness in space. And then the right wrist, right forearm, right elbow, right upper arm, right shoulder, all is one mass of sensations. Let them be conscious. Notice we're not trying to achieve anything. We're just noticing what is. There's no sense of becoming. It's very simple, collected attention. Feel both arms as sensations. A neck and back of the head, top of the head, forehead, eyes, nose, ears, mouth, and tongue. So both arms, neck, and head, all as one mass of sensations. Mind is composed, collected, knowing. No thinking. Bring attention to the hollow in the throat. Draw a line down into the inside of the chest. Feel inside the chest the left wall of the chest, to the right wall of the chest, back of the chest, and sensations in the front of the chest. Feel that whole area, feel the organs, diaphragm, lungs, and heart. Again, if you don't feel anything specific, don't look for it. Just let come what will come. Feel the whole chest area as one mass of sensations. The abdomen, belly, go inside the abdominal area, feel the walls of the abdomen, feel the inside left wall. Inside right wall. Inside back wall of the abdomen and the front of the abdomen. And feel the organs, anything that's obvious, the kidneys on the back, liver on the right, intestines below, stomach. Again, you don't have to be specific, just let that be conscious, whatever's there. So we're not looking for something, we're attending to what is. And that collects the mind, composes the mind. Feel the whole abdomen, that whole area as sensation. And the pelvic area, feel the pelvic bones, feel the weight of the body on the chair or the cushion. Inside the pelvic area, left wall of the pelvis, right wall of the pelvis, and back of the pelvis. The organs inside the pelvic area, the reproductive organs, urinary muscles, colon, rectum, whatever is felt there as sensation. Feel that whole area as sensation. Keep collecting, composing, knowing. Now feel the whole torso from pelvis to chest as one mass of vibrations. Not a concept, not a visual image, sensations. Changing, radiating in space, in awareness. Feel the whole torso, feel the whole torso, feel the arms, and the neck, and the back of the head, top of the head, forehead, inside the head, eyes, nose, ears, mouth, tongue. So from the pelvis all the way to the top of the head, one mass of sensations. Let that be conscious. And the left hip, feel the left hip. Know the sensations there. And the left thigh, the left knee, lower leg, left ankle, left foot, weight of the foot on the ground as sensation. And now that whole area from hip to foot, sensation radiating in all directions, in space, in awareness. And the right hip. Feel the right hip. Feel the sensations of the right, which are the right hip. Feel the sensations which are the thigh, the right thigh. And the right knee. The lower leg, ankle, and the right foot. The weight of the foot on the ground. And then that whole area from hip to foot, right side. Sensations as a mass of sensations. And then both legs brought together, coalesced together as one. Torso, arms, neck, and head, all brought together as one mass of vibration, sensations. Be the knowing sensations in awareness. Non-becoming, non-resistance, and non-distraction. No thought, just knowing. And bring the thought, I am, into your head. I am. I am. And bring that thought through the throat. Feel the sensations in the throat. Draw it down to the center of the chest. I am. Feel the sensations at the center of the chest. I am. Let go of the am. I. And then let go of the thought I. And be awareness itself. Awareness knowing bodily sensations. So awareness knows that bodily sensations are in awareness, objects changing. But also the paradox is that awareness is not separate from bodily sensations. Can you really find awareness as a separate object? So awareness, one with bodily sensations, and yet awareness distinct and knowing that bodily sensations are objects in awareness. These two perspectives, one with, not separate, and yet distinct, body in awareness. Both are true. So you can just stay with that, or if you want to pick up the breath or go through that pattern again, you're welcome to. But from that question, just try something. If you get confused, just do something. But do try to just be that awareness, see what happens, where you're not doing, but more being. All right, so I'll leave that and we'll sit quietly for the rest.
Brahma Chaloka Dipati Sampati Katanjaliya Divarangaya Chata Santi Dasata Paraja Kajatika Dese Dhamma Anuga Bima Paja.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. I was just thinking about the weaving. If you've ever tried your hand at weaving, it's probably one of the oldest crafts humans have been doing, weaving baskets, weaving cloth. I read somewhere that they have some piece of cloth. I don't know how it survived all these years, 3,000 years old. And so it's something that humans have been doing for a long, long time. But I suspect humans have been doing calming the mind too. I suspect there have been sadhus and all kinds of interesting religious shamans, spiritual people. That's part of our human heritage as well. And I'm very fortunate to live this life of being a sadhu in this fantastic tradition. I've kind of marveled at how did I end up here. It's quite a marvelous life. And when I reflect on my early years of monasticism, finding right effort was quite a task because I was very driven very idealistic, and so I was very driven to try to get enlightened and very idealistic, and then I had around me very strong men who also had a lot more experience than me. So Luang Por and Luang Por are these really high role models to look up to, which was good, but also my capacity the way I made effort was far too strenuous. It's just so over the top, trying and very critical if I didn't attain to something. And of course, you can't attain to anything if you haven't got right effort. It took a long time, and I even had a seizure once. I was doing without sleep, and Ajahn Chah was at a dana, and I collapsed on the floor and had a grand mal seizure. Too much effort. Almost bit my tongue off. It was really crazy. And they took me to the local. I kind of don't remember for a couple of hours what happened. But they took me to the local clinic, which wasn't really a clinic. It was a veterinary clinic. And so they had to stitch my head together because I had put my head through a window. Very pretty. And so they had one of these curved needles that you do shoes with, I think. They held me down. There was no anesthesia, and they put a few stitches in my head. And the monk with me, Ajahn Pabagro, had to leave. He got sick. So I kind of walked out of the clinic. I had a complete daze. What happened? And the local car dealer, Sangchai, I think his name was, also had a gas station, and he was a disciple of Luang Por Chah's. So I kind of tottered over there. Someone was with me, and Luang Por Chah was sitting there drinking a Pepsi. Pepsi was the beverage of choice. And he says to me, just take it easy, will you? That was, profound wisdom after doing that. So I suffered a lot from wrong effort. And I can laugh at it now, but boy, was it painful. I mean, it's so many levels. So finding right effort is really depends on your character, doesn't it? And the thing about Wampapong was that the effort prescribed for everyone was quite fierce. So there was the language of fight with your defilements, kill your defilements, don't give in, strive onwards. Tomorrow you might die. I almost killed myself when I believed all that. And so the language was something that was probably from Northeast Thai culture, because I think the Thai people there were much more relaxed than I was. So their nature, their cultural nature was much more sabai sabai. I've been lying. Take it easy. But my nature was not that. My nature was oriented to becoming, to accomplishing, to getting, and then the counter to that was then the orientation to get rid of and to expunge or annihilate. So when I heard the language of, they used the word toraman, and toraman can mean torture. Now, then again, stand ties. There's another problem. And then the third problem was most of the talks were in Lao. That took me about 6 months to figure out that they weren't even speaking Thai. It was quite a mess, really. So when I heard toraman, and then another Westerner would interpret it as torture, I didn't realize that the cultural context was basically, don't just follow your desires. Play around with them, practice restraint. But I heard the word toraman and said, yeah, that's what I have to do. I have to push myself. I have to make determinations. And so I'd fast, and then each pansa, each vasa, I'd make another determination. And then finally, maybe around my 4th year, I said to Luang Por, Luang Por, I determined to make no more determinations. And he said, Sadhu. Finally, the guy understands something. So even though I was well-intentioned, there wasn't wisdom yet. There was just this kind of young guy, terribly willing to do this in an overly tough way. But I did learn. I did learn. And so whatever language you get around this teaching, say around right effort, you have to consider it. How does it fit you? So maybe, like a teacher says, just take it easy. Don't make it a problem. And you're already a kind of take it easy person. So you go watch Netflix for another 3 hours and drink Coca-Cola rather than Pepsi. That's not going to work, right? So it's always up to each of us to take this teaching and see, what is the relevance of this to my own practice, and maybe what's its cultural context. Does it really speak to me? And I can be the only judge of what works in that way. So say around, like the word Samma Samadhi is usually translated as right concentration. I don't like that translation myself. And I like the translation more proper composure, sustained collectedness. And for me, that's a different word. It speaks to something different in me. When I use the word concentration, then I'm thinking more of the object. And as I always say, if I'm working on a table saw, and I think the saw is very dangerous, and I have to get the cut very parallel and correct, I have to measure it well, I'm very much concerned about concentrating on the object, right? So the word concentration, that's what the word means for me. So when someone when I talk to someone, what are other ways we might talk about Samma Samadhi? And then someone says, well, there's another way to say it's collectedness or it's composure. You know, it's about the attitude of mind to stay collected and composed in the moment. And then right effort is sustaining that collectedness and composure for long periods of time. That fits me much, much better than the word concentration. But I'm not saying that, you know, the word concentration is wrong. So when you listen to things, you have to sort of take that into account. Say the word, like I mean, I don't know Thai very well, hardly at all anymore, but like a Thai Ajahn in translating might use Samma Samadhi, but he might talk about collectedness and composure. The English translator, because he's so used to translating Samadhi as concentration, might always use concentration. So in the transfer of language, you start to get oftentimes biases in translation. So in this exercise that you're doing, how much effort do you need? And that's a kind of, what kind of effort do you need to make when you, let's say, first of all, what is like collectedness of mind? What would that mean in your life? What would that feel like when the mind is composed and collected? Well, you could look at the opposite. What does the mind feel like when it's scattered? That's easier. Most of the mind, you know, most of the time we're scattered, maybe. So that's kind of easier to, okay, it's not that. That's for sure. That's not that. So what would collected and composed feel like? Maybe you just use that language. What's collected feel like? And then you notice your minds are scattered. You're always thinking about something else, or daydreaming, or fantasizing, or churning up memories. So that doesn't feel composed, right? And then, so you use language like that to reflect on, first of all, where you're at. And then you think, oh, what would right effort be to create composure? So for me, when I made effort, it wasn't about composure, it was about attainment and getting. So I was coming from idealism, from ideas of what I had to get, and that I wasn't noticing that I have to get something. So in this meditation, I kept trying to emphasize, you're not trying to get anything, rather you lay down the right efforts based on composure, keep remembering that right effort, and those are the causes for the mind to be composed. Because if your effort is in line with composure and peace and non-desire and non-becoming, if it's in line with that, then the result should be one of composure. If it's in line with craving, then the mind will never be peaceful. So it's not really about technique. It's more about attitude. And then having enough sustained attention on your experience of meditation where you see, oh, that was too tight. I just felt tight afterwards. Again, as I said earlier, quite often you'll just hit upon a moment of deep silence, some deep peace. Maybe if you haven't meditated much, sometimes there's a kind of almost like an accident. You just trip over and fall into deep silence. And that can be a disaster because for the rest of your life, you're trying to return to that deep silence. And then the trap is, of course, you're trying to become something that you kind of remember. And that won't work because you're not aware of how things are. The other way is you hear about things. You hear about levels of concentration and you think, I have to get that. And then that's even more difficult because you don't even know what it is. Someone told you or you read it, and then you have this whole cultural construct of getting something, some attainment, some form of meditative attainment, and then you try to find that. And what you're experiencing is not that. You're experiencing dullness or restlessness. So keep trying to get rid of what is present to achieve what you don't even know you're trying to achieve. You just have some idea because you've read it in the book and someone said to you. So always we begin with right understanding being this moment feels as it feels. That's right understanding. So acceptance, presence, awareness of the way things are. And if you get very, very good at that, then you'll see each meditation is different. Each day is different. The emotional material you're dealing with, the bodily feelings you're dealing with, each day will be different. And you have the kind of flexibility to apply even a technique, apply it in a different way, in different circumstances. If you're just sort of technique oriented and just trying to do something with your technique to attain something, you get really, really frustrated. So Luang Por never taught technique. He wasn't a kind of, he said, oh yeah, watch your breath. But basically he told me just to endure. And he could see that no matter how much meditation I was going to try, I just had to wear out some of the bad habits I have by living a good life, by not distracting, by being diligent and coming to the meetings and helping the senior monks and being grateful for the alms food and learning to be content with little. And those things are actually much more profound in my meditation. My meditation wasn't terribly profound, but I tried. But just the fact of constantly, like the Indriya Samvara, sense restraint, monasteries in Thailand, in those days, I mean, there was just nothing. There was no sense. The only sense experience was one meal a day, and that was it. It was kind of exciting, but when the food was very, very simple, so it was actually very, very helpful. Culturally, it was difficult because there was no cultural stimulation and no one to talk to oftentimes, no language. So it was kind of lonely. But because there was no real stimulation, then I just had to deal with the restlessness of my mind, observe it, nowhere to go really. And that was very helpful, very helpful. So the mind settled down not through my techniques, but rather through lifestyle. And then another of the important principles of monastic life is santuti, or contentment with little. That's very, very important. And because we're alms mendicants, we're given the four requisites. And then the idea is to practice contentment with little. And I often refer to this because there's a difference between the idealism of contentment with little and the practice of contentment with little, isn't there? Idealism would be, I should be content with whatever's offered, I shouldn't complain. That's attachment to an ideal, and that creates a lot of suffering. The other is attachment to complaining and believing my complaining. Well, that's also a lot of suffering, but contentment as little as a kind of contemplative reflection day in and day out becomes a mirror to my own attitudes to food or clothing or schedule of the day or weather or whatever simple things were in the monastery. There weren't many choices. There were no choices really. And so then the mind would complain about something, and then constantly the reflection was, yeah, but the way of the monk is contentment with little. And that, if I brought that up as a contemplation rather than as an ideal, it then created like a mirror to how I was behaving mentally. If I had just picked it up as an ideal, then I would just create more ego. You should be content. These people work so hard. They're taking care of you. You're such a pathetic case of Viradhammo. Your hope, that is attachment to idealism. So the idea of reflection around these high principles is very powerful, but you can very much misuse it and run off into the egotism of idealism. But reflection then actually, day in and day out, I had one meal a day. The food is very simple. And when Ajahn Chah was there, the food even became more simple, which was hard to believe. And then when he came, then, had a bit of fun, a bit of action, not much. And I'd get all excited about a Pepsi or something like that. And then, the mind, like I remember, I this weird memory where there was Sengchai, the same guy, the same man actually, who had the gas station. he was fairly wealthy for that part of the world. And every now and then this was in Tempsang Pet, he would come with his pickup truck and present really great volumes of beautiful food. And never, I never thought of myself as a foodie because I just took it all for granted. But I tell you, when you've got nothing else, there's no sex, drugs, and rock and roll, no language to speak, nothing going on, then what becomes important is a mango or a bit of food. Embarrassing to think about it. So I began to have an incredibly sharp perception of the sound of Sang Chai's truck in the distance. So I'd kind of like in the morning, I'd be listening. Oh, please come. And my mind, oh, is that it? No, that's not it. So the greed in my mind would create this incredible scenario of hope and expectation. But then the mind would present, just be content with little. So he wouldn't arrive and I'd feel disappointed and, oh gosh. And then the reflection was, no, content with little. So I began to see this the silliness of my greed, but it was, it was silly, but it was real. You can say it's, ridiculous, but it certainly hurt. Why? Because that's, I have been conditioned to just take for granted in a wealthy society anything I wanted, basically. So I wasn't a foodie, but I ate food when I wanted, and I ate what I wanted. And now that desire is frustrated, the habit of desire, not just the desire, the habit of desire is frustrated. And what comes up is craving for fine foods. But then the reflection allows me to see that as an object. Oh, this is the feeling of discontent. And that's an object in awareness. Oh, discontent feels this way. Okay. And then if my mind started to run off on it, I'd say, no, content, like complaining about the food, contentment with little. And then I'd say, oh, complaining is an object in awareness. So as I used the reflective contemplation as a way of to be more mindful of something which was unskillful, which was not peaceful, which wasn't conducive to nibbana, I began to have more peace. Not because I attached to the idealism of contentment, was because I used that as a reflective principle to be more aware of discontent. And if I'm more aware of discontent as an object and don't just run with it, believe it, think through, then discontent begins to die as a mental formation. And the mind begins to have more composure and more collectedness, obviously. And so that's the training of a monk is set up in that way, where the Ajahn Chah didn't expect me to be content, but he did expect me to be content to reflect on that. And so he would say, I'd say to him, oh, Luang Por, my meditation is just, I'm hopeless, just hopeless. And he gave me no technique. And he said, yeah, makes sense. yeah. And well, what did you expect? You've never trained the mind. And he said, just oton. And oton in Thai is endure. And Lao, I think it's what ow. I can't remember. And oton. And that was one of the most constant reflections we were given, oton. And sometimes he would say, 5 years, you might be a bit more calm. So he wasn't giving me any kind of, he wasn't whispering the esoteric language of Buddhism in my ear. And then I just popped into samadhi. I wish. Or that he would sprinkle water on me and say, okay, you'll be right. Tomorrow, you'll be right as rain. Viradhammo, you'll be enlightened. Don't worry. No, he was realistic. He said, well, you're one of these Farangs who thinks too much. You're one of these Westerns, you've read too much. So he told me to stop reading for 5 years. What? Stop reading? Couldn't do it. So I had a busy mind. Intellect was important to me. I had a very idealistic kind of idea. I was very self-critical, self-judgmental. I had read too much about attainment. I had had some experiences which were profound, and I was trying to repeat those. So it was a whole smorgasbord of habits. And so what else could Luang Por say to me? He said, "Wat Ton, endure, endure." And because he's such a powerful and beautiful man, and he had the goods, you know, I want some of what he had. So I believed him. I believed him. So, and access was very helpful, because mind falls into doubt. What am I going to do? I'm not getting anywhere in my practice. And I was angry again at that monk and blah, 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 blah. And he said, "Oton." Now the Oton, or the, you know, endure, was in the framework of good moral living, good kalyanamitta, good friendships, good work for a young man, good work. So there's lots to do in that way. And so I found that actually there was a very rich culture, even though it wasn't my culture. It was a very rich culture because it valued silence, it valued simplicity, it valued its great teachers, Luang Por Chah and other teachers. So the value system there was different. Well, there were values which were much higher, or different, say, not different. I mean, those values do exist, but say silence. The value of silence was held very high, and just a lot of, you know, waiting for the meal, everyone's silent. Waiting for a Dhamma talk, everyone's silent. Lay people are silent, not chittering and chattering, and so a kind of value system of spiritual aspiration, noble aspiration, became evident to me, as opposed to the kind of ideas I had of like success or accumulation or acquisition and things like that. And so that kind of learning is not really a meditation technique. It's obviously, it's a lifestyle. And as a bhikkhu, it's very hard to speak to lifestyle to lay people, because you have different lives, you have complicated lives. And so perhaps the bhikkhu's life is a sort of modeling of a possibility, but you can't emulate a bhikkhu's life. You can't do that. You have to find that in your own relationships and your own lifestyle. But in any way, I would say that you can simplify your life, less, not more, to give yourself more chance for the mind to rest and begin to know the way things are, rather than just jumping from the next event to the next event to the next event. That, I would say, it would be a huge step in the way of developing a lifestyle which is contemplative. When one looks at, say, the recommendations in the Judaic religion of, like, what's it, the Torah? Is it the Torah? That's their kind of lay Vinaya. It's really laid out in much detail. Islam, for the lay people also, is laid out in a lot of detail. We monks have the same in the Pali Canon, the Vinaya. It's laid out in detail. Our prohibitions, the ways we relate as community, the way we defer to hierarchy, the way we share resources, legal procedures, how we deal with monks who are parajika, and all the rest of it. It's a whole body of protocols and system of living together as community. Now, the Buddha really couldn't do that for the lay people, because lay people lived all kinds of lives, varied kinds of lives. So obviously what you usually hear is the 5 precepts and mutual relationships of responsibility. So the teacher cares for the student cares for the teacher, husband cares for wife cares for husband. The employer takes care of the employees take care of the employer. This kind of mutuality of respect and care. They're very general. So since you all of you being here and taking the time to do this, you obviously have a huge aspiration for this work, and you like to do this work. It's not easy sometimes, but do consider that technique is fine. Try to develop a technique, but keep working on lifestyle. What is it in your life that is like when you sit and you have all the echoes of what happened in the day, all the papancha that happened in the day, is there any of any part of that that you could simplify? You know, obviously we talked about the inputs of media, which can really stir up the mind, but is there any way that you can introduce more silence into your daily schedule? You have family, you have to be careful and so on, but periods of not doing, of just being, and periods where you're not feeling the mind. And that's, of course, what happened to me at Wat Pho home, was that when in Wat Nana Cha and other monasteries, but I wasn't filling the mind with anything. And because I wasn't filling the mind with anything, the habits of mind became more obvious. My aversions, my fears, my jealousies, all of that became more obvious because now I had no distraction. But that was a good thing. That was a good thing. It's, you know, the habits just had to come out. And that's the sort of sense of consciousness is the escape hatch. Things come up into consciousness when we are willing to not engage with distractions. And that's a hard part of the practice. And so because our modern life has such really interesting distractions, really fun distractions, they're not immoral, but they're very, very interesting. You can keep going to interesting distractions, but the downside of that is, and you can be very informed and tell everyone about what you just saw in a documentary, and then watch another documentary. You can watch documentaries on Buddhism, you know, on Ajahn Chah, and then tell everyone what you know about Ajahn Chah. So what? Right? Yeah, okay, big deal. Now, and then one day you stop and you try to sit. What do you want to do? You want to watch a documentary on Buddhism. And it's much harder to look at the mind wanting to watch a documentary than watching a documentary, isn't it? You know, so you can watch Buddhism and it's good. It can inspire you and so on. But watching your mind is more difficult and but more fruitful. And it takes more kind of it's more of a challenge. When the mind is distracted, it doesn't really develop any parami. If you think about watching a lot of media, even though they're interesting, you don't require any effort to do that. It's made interesting for you. The colors are interesting. The dialogue's interesting. The drama, whatever it is, it's interesting. So you are a passive recipient of experience. So that develops no parami. Whereas, like if you learn how to bake bread, huh? You're not a passive participant. You have to engage in the making of bread, and so you bake a loaf, and then you have a different kind of satisfaction, a different kind of happiness, because you've taken something which you've never done before, and maybe you've messed up a bit, and then you finally bake a good loaf, and you give most of it away to your friends. Now, that kind of happiness is different than the happiness of consuming an experience which was just given to you. So modern culture, consumer culture, when it's just done at that level of consuming objects, is actually very unhappy. It's distracting, and it can be kind of scintillating or something for a period of time, but it doesn't really lead to contentment or self-worth of any profound kind. And just think about that example of baking bread. What is that happiness? That's a happiness of skill, of sustaining effort, of getting resources to make the bread, and then being careful in the watching of the bread, and then sharing it with others. That's much different. So a lifestyle which engages in that way, which develops worldly skills, can be very rewarding. So some people learn code, and some people learn to bake, and some people do home economics. Like home economics, caring for a family, and keeping an eye on the budget, knowing you have limited resources, putting out a meal for a family of 5, home economics. That's a huge skill, isn't it? Using the food in a way where you don't waste it. Learning how to cook leftovers, I guess, huh? That's a very important skill. And so there's a certain amount of pride in that, I think, good pride. Learn how to do that. And so when the Buddha talked about blessings, one of the things he said, a great blessing is the development of skills, because we do live in a world, and you need to relate, and you can't always be on the meditation cushion contemplating the subtleties of awareness, not being separate from objects. That you only do when the monk kind of drops in on you. But most of life isn't much more ordinary, and that. So to see the ordinaries of life as the field of meditation as well, that's important, rather than thinking meditation is just. So if you take the ideas of Samma Samadhi's composure and collectedness, then Samma Samadhi is possible all the time. You won't succeed, but you can give it a go. If you see Samma Samadhi's absorption, you're absorbed in some object where you're not aware of anything else, then Samma Samadhi, you can't use that in ordinary life. What is it? But if it is a sense of composure and collectedness, you're not always concentrating, are you? You're in a room and you're at a meeting and people are talking and you're getting a bit nervous or uptight or restlessness. You could practice Samma Samadhi as composure, but if you see it as concentration, what are you going to do? Your boss is talking and you're fed up with your boss. You're going to do anapanasati and absorb into jhana and get fired? It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen to you, right? So how does Samma Samadhi become something which is more relevant and constant in our lives? So that's why I think for me, that sense of collectedness and composure in all manner of activity, whether it's baking bread, making furniture, doing code, being with your boss, being with your kids, that seems something which is more applicable all the time. So when we do a retreat, it's a curious thing, isn't it? We're kind of keeping the world at bay, as it were, doing this thing, especially if you're in a retreat center. But how applicable are the efforts that you make and the understandings you have? How applicable are they to your family life? Composure certainly must be applicable to the way you relate with your kids or your grandparents. One of the examples I like to give is I've often talked about this one. It was we were invited to do retreats in Oxford, in a retreat center in Oxford, and the owners of this retreat center, they had these wooden bungalows out back, and they themselves lived in a large mansion. And the mother of the family, she was a brilliant meditator, and she would do these retreats, but she'd be so absorbed into refinement of silence and stillness that she said when she came back to be with the family, the sound of the cutlery at the table annoyed her. So her kids banging their spoons was annoying. And I said to her, so what's the point of your meditation? And if your meditation makes you so tranquil and so serene and so off into the lovely la-la realms of whatever, and then you come back and then you're annoyed at your daughter because she's slurping her soup, is that Samma Samadhi? And she was quite a wise woman, and she knew that. But for me, it was fascinating to see how she could do this stuff, but then in the real world, she had to find another way of being. My hope is that the transition from meditation to the traffic jam should not be extraordinary. It should be the same practice, no? And if the practice is first and foremost right understanding, and right understanding is knowing, I feel this way now. Life feels this way now. Then whether I do it in a meditation or in a traffic jam, it's the same practice. It's not concentrating to get rid of the traffic jam because you're in the car. You've got to be in the traffic jam. And then composure. If your idea of meditation is concentrating on some object like a visual image or a refined bit of the breath, what are you going to have to do when you drive the car? Can't do that. You have to be, your awareness has to be very open and attentive and available, huh? And maybe driving a car is more analogous to an awareness which we're trying to develop in ordinary life. You know, you have to have a really kind of broad sense of awareness. Not that I drive a car. That's what it seems like what you have to do. So do contemplate how you have perceived meditation. Is meditation a concentration exercise where you try to get rid of thoughts, get rid of all intrusive sound, and simply zone into something, forget about the world? Or is meditation with the way things are, be they good, bad, or different, and composure with the way things are, with pain in the back, with loud noises outside, with people who are difficult? Can you see meditation as awareness with those things? Then it seems to me what will happen is then your capacity for insight then is enhanced, because now you're with the way things are. You're not rejecting them, trying to concentrate away from them. And in that space of presence and awareness, you begin to see the causes for your suffering in ordinary life, in your interaction in the traffic jam or in the bakery or wherever you are. And then you can say, oh yeah, when this person says that, I really get defensive. Oh, and defensiveness feels this way. Or when that person said that, I carried it around as, oh, resentment. Or I really felt jealous when she got the raise and I didn't. Or whatever. But then, because Samma Samadhi has now been, and right effort has been defined in a very ordinary way, not just as on a meditation cushion, you enhance the capacity for understanding, right? Understanding, oh, that's where I get caught. That's where my mind gets caught. I want to be more aware of that. So the next time the person insults you, you say, oh, insult feels this way. And you don't get defensive, maybe, just feel it, you know it. You say something, you don't say something, but you become better and better. You're right, your effort becomes integrated to how you suffer and where peace lies, rather than an abstract that you only do on the meditation cushion. And then, you know, all of life becomes much more interesting. You have the idea, I don't know if it exists in, say, Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand, but in the West, we have the idea of retreat junkies. Have you heard of that? Retreat junkies, right? They go from retreat to retreat to retreat to retreat, and then they do another retreat. I don't know where they get the money to do this, but maybe they serve on the retreat, something. And so their perception, I'm not saying that all people who do a lot of retreats are like that, but this one particular cohort of people really just want to be tranquil. And so they use the retreat to tranquilize the mind, and then they have a perception. That's real life. Retreat is real life. The rest is just a filler. And the rest is a filler, maybe to make a bit of money so that I can do retreat. Is that really what the Buddha was teaching us? That all, you know, most of life is a filler until you're meditating? What about compassion? And what about dana? What about caring for your parents? You know, what about caring for your water systems or your education system? Where is all that? So if our meditation is simply an exclusion of life and some kind of idea that you just meditate very, very fiercely and then there'll be some insight and then you can serve the world, is that true? And Luang Por, you read about him, yeah, he had really powerful insights, but he did say that he learned a lot as a Tudong monk, but he learned a lot more as an abbot of a monastery. You know, where's that at? One of the monks and one of the abbots, one of the Western abbots, you know, Tudong is the idea of the wandering monk. So the wandering monk has a really tough time, doesn't know where to get water, doesn't know where to sleep. Well, you know, maybe he won't find food. So there's a kind of toughness about that. Each day is insecure. And this one monk who became the abbot of a big monastery, he said, being the abbot of a monastery is like going on Tudong. I said, what? Tudong? What do you mean? Yeah, I never know what's going to come at me. I never know what's going to hit me. It was interesting reflection. So my hope is that we define these things in a way which are not saying that everything else is wrong, but in a way which is actually useful. Samma Samadhi being something that's actually useful and practical in the way we engage with life. So because this is a Zoom retreat, I suppose you're kind of coming in and out of the retreat mode. You're going to maybe to family or to the market or whatever. See, how does meditation actually make you more adaptable to the marketplace? Rather than, I got to go to the marketplace. I want to do the retreat. Or you run to the marketplace because you don't want to do the retreat. I mean, that's the other way to go. Yeah, so Samma Samadhi, right composure, right collectedness, and right effort. What are they in your life? And then right mindfulness. What's wrong mindfulness? What's miccha sati? Well, for me, right mindfulness is mindfulness always has the component of reflection in it. So when I'm taking the theme of contentment with little, then I'm practicing sati with the theme of santuti, of contentment with little. So it's not just being careful not to trip and fall. Sure, that's a part of sati, but it's much more than that. And it has the sense of a theme in it oftentimes. So when I pick up a theme like contentment with a little, and I really make that intention, I think I'll make that part of the kind of project for this week, this month, whenever. I'll just use that idea, I'll write it down. I'll put it on my screensaver or whatever heck you want. And then I'll keep remembering that. So that's sati imbued with a theme. And then as I start to complain about life, I said, no, content with little. Oh, this is discontent, feels this way. And then sati is very, very meaningful because it's always imbued with Dhamma. And the particular instruction the Buddha offered us doesn't have to be a lot. You can see how like one theme, like content with little, that'd take you long, it could take you a long way, but you'd have to keep remembering. So sati has a sense of remembering, recollecting what? The present moment, but also some kind of thematic reflection. All right, I think that's lots to think about, so I'll leave that for your reflection.
Andamayam ovadagatha sadhu karang kadama se sadhu 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 anumodami.
Shall we finish with the Metta Sutta? This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be at ease, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another. or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child. So with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, free from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding, by not holding to fixed views. The pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. All right, see you next time.